All right, we're live. How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing well, brother. How about you?
Pretty good. Just had a good workout, looking at a bunch of podcasts, and now we're here. So
Here we are.
continuing a good day.
Good.
Where are you based out of?
So we are just south of Tulsa in Oklahoma.
Okay, I've
So I think
never
never
been
been.
to. No, never.
Yeah,
What's that
most
like?
people fly over us. If you're familiar with Texas, we're just north of that.
Okay. Yeah, what's that? What's that? I meant to ask you that too. What's the spiritual world tour? That's your clothing brand?
Yeah, it's our apparel company. So you'll see, I don't know what's in the frame right now, but yeah, we've got hats everywhere. So I would say our biggest seller are hats. And so we're
Yeah.
always dropping new designs. And like we're an apparel company that focuses on drops. So, we release limited releases and then we sell those out. And that funds the next round of our apparel. So it's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
We're based primarily out of Nashville.
Nice. Yeah, it looks like some quality stuff. I like it. So for the viewers, could you, like I was saying before, I have a lot of not podcasts, a lot of fathers, business owners,
Cool.
coaches that
Yeah.
are guests on the podcast. Ultimately, we're all trying to serve the world. We're all trying to create stronger men, right? Can you give a little background of your program and mission and really how you work with your guys?
Sure. Yeah. So, I would say first and foremost, my name's Cody, Sarah's trophy husband, and I am the dad to Stetson Foster and the bonus dad to Titus. And so we're out here in Oklahoma. I run a few endeavors, but we'll say for the sake of this conversation, we'll focus primarily on our mastermind roundtable, which is for kingdom-minded men in business. I say that because I was in occupational ministry as a pastor for 13 years, transitioned into the business sector in 2016, and have been in the space ever since. So, still a pastor, just traded the pulpit for a larger platform. And so Roundtable exists to help good men become great. We focus on 4 pillars: head, heart, health, and habits. So we recognize that if this is who we are as men, then this is what we do. So we establish a framework of identity of who we say we are. We then couple that with the daily action steps that confirm that identity and tie that into a purpose that is greater than ourselves. Most of our guys are dads. Most of our guys are husbands. Vast majority of our guys are in business for themselves. And so they're founders, entrepreneurs, and so they're responsible for the revenue and income that they bring into the home. So helping with business infrastructure, sales, marketing systems, things of that nature, help with the physical side of things, because we believe you got one body to change the world in. So we want to make sure that you take care of it appropriately. We believe in the cornerstone of marriage. And so we want to make sure that for all of our guys who are married and for all of our guys who are in the process of finding a wife, that we do so with ethics and integrity, that we treat our wives with the utmost of respect. We don't parade them around like possessions, that we keep that sacred. And again, being healthy, loving, present, strong fathers. For a lot of us, we had some of those needs met. A lot of us don't know how to be well-rounded in all of those areas, or we're doing the best with the hand that we've been given. And so again, helping to become dads that our boys want to grow up and be, and that our daughters would want to one day marry guys like.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love
And all,
how
all wrapped around the identity that the the Bible is what it says it is, and that Jesus is the Lord. I make no concessions about my beliefs there.
yeah, like
Yeah.
how I love how you started out by mentioning your wife too, right? Because it's like there's two parts. You mentioned your wife and the sacredness, right? It's
Mhm. Yeah.
what is actually that could be a good focus for this because what is a man's purpose? It's to serve women, right? So there's all this distortion now I see about like what is a guy, and it's pushed to such extreme. And I think what you said, it's like a lot of guys they're they're serving kind of the lower self and the pleasure and parading women around. I think you said it right, and yeah, I like everything you said. It was extremely clear, and which is important. And it's like a man's purpose is ultimately to serve a woman. So it's like, what's the foundational pieces? The business, the providing, all
Yeah.
those things. And
Well, I think if we're able to physically and mentally, then a man has 3 primary roles. And so one is to protect. So to be physically present and strong and capable to be able to protect in a multitude of ways. To provide. It is my belief that a man provides for the home. Not that women can't have their role and place in all of that. I have no qualms with that. I just know that for me in my house, I'm responsible for the provision of this home. And the third is to pioneer. So to chart new paths, to do things that haven't been done before, to break generational curses that you didn't know you were responsible for breaking, to transform trauma so that you don't transmit it to your kids and transmit it into the relationship that you call sacred. So again, protect, provide, and pioneer. I think those are the three things. And they're often, they go without thanks. They go without necessarily a lot of recognition. And I don't think that that's a good or bad thing necessarily. I know that in my home, my wife is really, really great to celebrate, who I am and who we're raising our boys to be. I know that's not the case in every home, but I will say that from a man's perspective, you give him a woman who values his purpose and edifies that purpose, and you have a man who's unstoppable.
Dude, we'll run through walls. I tell people that all the time.
That's it.
I'm like, it's a woman's going to make or break your life, right? And I think that's a good kind of question to ask yourself, right? It's like, are you inspired to drive yourself forward? Is your woman supporting that? Is she giving the right energy behind that? So you can, what is protect, provide, pioneer?
Protect, provide, pioneer. Yeah. And,
That's
that can look a lot of different ways. I've got friends, we candidly off camera talked about a few of them who have wives who are, kind of building empires alongside them. And a lot of the leaders in our space would tell you that is the modality, that is the way that, your wife should want to build alongside you and be an empire builder and have that entrepreneurial spirit, be that alpha woman that stands alongside her alpha man, the queen to the king, as they would say, which is very interesting. Like, I don't know what you're king of, but I think it's a rather arrogant title. I serve one king, and that's just for me. Again, everybody else's mileage may vary. I can tell you that the most important
I think it's a good
proposition.
point.
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's a good point because there's a lot of, guys that have success say, oh, I did it. It was all me, self-made. You're never self-made, right? It's like, who is giving you the power and energy to be able to do that, right? It's an honoring of God to be able to receive, to be able to receive more.
God put you there. Now, you can be a good steward, right? In Matthew, it talks about stewardship and being a good steward of the talents that God's given you and to be resourceful to that. Otherwise, it's given to someone else who will be more responsible. So that's always my contention, is always want to be faithful to what God's given me with always recognizing that God put me here. It wasn't my talent. It wasn't you that put me on this podcast. It wasn't anybody that put me on a stage. It was God who put me here, and God called me to it. And so God will see me through it. And so if that's the case, then my wife, I don't need her to be a builder. I don't need her to be some, bad boss babe. I need peace. And my wife is the most peaceful human being that you will meet. Now, don't piss her off. She is German. So she will tell you exactly how she feels. Make no mistake. She is a very strong woman. And in that, she, with me, is incredibly feminine, and she allows me to lead this home effectively and provides me all of the emotional and nurturing support that a woman does. And that, to me, is the most important thing that I needed in a spouse. It wasn't that I needed some larger than life personality beside me. Had that been the case, and had that been what God provided, amazing, great. But for me, really, in order to fulfill what I feel I'm called to fulfill, recognizing that I was worthy of love without having to prove something, and that peace could exist for me when I grew up in a home that didn't have a lot of peace. And so love to me meant confrontation and putting out fires and solving problems. And to recognize that love can exist without needing to create problems to solve has been a really beautiful healing experience.
Yeah, it's partly. And what enables, there's always everything in life is relationships, right? And in relationships, if you do any content about relationships, it goes crazy because that's ultimately what we're striving to accomplish: a relationship with ourselves, relationship with God, and relationship with others.
Sure.
And there's sort of there could be a pointing of fingers, right? Oh, he needs to do this, she needs to do that. But my question is, what would you say enables a woman to become more feminine? What is the man's responsibility to enable the woman to support her feminine?
Have purpose, have vision, and support that trust.
Yeah,
a woman will melt when she trusts you. And so if you find yourself in a breakdown of your relationship, or you find yourself where there's a lot of walls, there's just a lack of trust. And so, it says where we lack vision, that people perish, that, a man without purpose is akin to a ship without a rudder. And so when we lack that vision and purpose, and we lack that clear delineation that regardless of what happens, regardless of what storms come, I've got this. Well, then if we don't, biologically, a woman will always revert into masculine just out of protection and self-preservation. And so if your woman is not opening up to you, if she's not feeling soft and feminine to you, then there's either a trauma that's unresolved, right? Which can happen, but also that means that there's just a lack of trust. That trust hasn't been formed to where she feels safe to let her guard down and feels safe to feel cared for because that trust has been breached in some way. It doesn't mean it's been breached by you necessarily. It could have been breached in past relationships or in previous trauma from childhood or anything, any other number of things. But it is your responsibility that if you love her, to be patient through that and to consistently provide that, again, protecting, providing, pioneering spirit that allows her to know, hey, I've got this.
Yeah, I think that's where it's a man's responsibility to step up and build. Like that's kind of what I was getting to is the trust. That was the key word there. It's, if you aren't there yet, right? I always tell guys, your mission is your number one priority, and then your woman, because your mission is going to build you, it's going to build your strength, and you're going to be able to serve the woman. Without that, you're not going to have the resilience, you're not going to have the clarity, you're not going to have the drive to honor a woman at the level you actually can, right?
Yeah.
Now, you can check a box. You can check a box and make a lot of money, but making just money and not building yourself as a man and spiritually is still, you know, you're still going to sacrifice a lot. It's not really good. It's just going back to your program, right? It's a piece in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And, finding what's happening now, actually, I just saw this before I was working out, is for some reason, women think they should teach men how to be men.
Sure.
It's odd because I'm like, ultimately we learn through, we have the vehicle is a different purpose, right? So it's like a man needs to teach a man how to be a man, and vice versa. A woman needs to teach a woman. Unfortunately, there's very poor archetypes for each one, and there's a lot of confusion about, which is which. So yeah, you get these, social media has created sort of more confusion. But yeah, there's these women dating coaches that are doing really well teaching men how to be men, but I don't think that really leads you to your highest potential. There's just not. I can't teach a woman how to be a woman. I'll admit that, right? It's like it's
Oh no,
impossible for me.
I would never. Yeah, that would be a fool's errand.
Yeah, and it can be really damaging, right? So, I always say it's like look at that's what that's why we have superheroes and movies and all these stuff is we used to have really good archetypes.
Yeah. One,
You know,
I think women. I also think that there has been such a lack of that there's a growing frustration on the side of women, and rightfully so. And so there's a desire not necessarily to tell men how to be men, but more to do the best that they can to articulate what they feel that they need, that they're not experiencing, that would be the responsibility of a man, so it can feel like I'm telling you what you need to do and how you need to do it, when really I'm just trying to communicate what I need and where we're lacking. And so I think there can be a cross pollination there.
yeah, of course. So my teachers in the lineage I study with, we have. I was just telling somebody before we have different leadership and councils and divinas and all that, and you're learning both sides. And we have a lot of classes in hermetics. You're learning universal principles, and you're learning aspects of each, right? There's a thing I'm talking about this a lot recently. It's like, oh, guys need to be more in tune with their feminine side, and guys are like, what does that mean? It's like you have to understand the virtues and aspects of the feminine so you can actually understand the feminine. Or sort of these guys now that are very crazy yelling masculine. And what does that? It's interesting. That's happening a lot right now. Is with the hyper masculine guys, they're like hitting a wall because once you hit that glass ceiling, where can you go? They start pushing harder and harder and harder, and then it becomes a distortion of what a man actually is. And it has that limitation. So yeah, you need both sides. It's like all this is like coming together, right? It's like relationship with yourself, relationship with others, relationship with God. I think that leads to fulfillment ultimately. But yeah, everything. I guess this is going to be a more relationship based podcast. Now, what you said before, right? It's like we all have a starting point of suffering that we want to overcome. And what was that like for you? And if you want, feel free to talk about your story if you want. But really, what was that turning point? What was that kind of like, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, to the inspiration? Was it a mentor? Was it the church? Was it like, what was that kind of inspiration to put you on your path now.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is due to like stress and overwhelm of carrying too many things and being too many things to too many people and experiencing a great deal of tragedy and trauma. I won't go too deep into my story. I mean, you can Google it. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I just mean like I've told it over 300 times on podcasts.
Yeah.
So I went through a very traumatic season while being a pastor and while going through a divorce, and was still working 18 hours a day as a new father, trying to navigate lost identities and not knowing how to say no because my entire sense of self-worth was wrapped up in what I could do for other people. And that just comes from a lot of childhood trauma and being a pleaser and a fixer. In 2000, like late 2016 or 2017, I went septic. And so it almost killed me. Like my body just shut down due to all the stress and overwhelm and seeing too much trauma and burying too many people in one year while navigating my own situations. And it was in that hospital room where, the thought was, your son is like 1.5 and nobody's coming to save you. And is the legacy that you leave behind that he never knew you, but man, you really showed up for everyone else. And what does that get you? So I asked myself the question of what needs to die in me to become the man that I said that I would be. And that's been the question I've asked every day since. And that's the journey that I've been on is, again, how do I eradicate and heal a lot of those stories so that my son doesn't inherit them? And how do I cultivate the healthiest marriage that I can? How do I cultivate the healthiest co-parenting relationship that I can? How do I create a scenario where not that my son avoids adversity, because that's going to find him either way, but I don't add and exacerbate to the trauma experience any more than necessary. And on the backside of that, it's led to a lot of leadership opportunities. And so, now having multiple companies, but also being in the space of leadership and getting to travel as a keynote and putting out content that, I think organically we're at about, 12 million views a month right now organically, which is pretty stellar for a guy from rural Oklahoma. God's hand's been in the middle of all of it. It all had to happen this way. Life is never happening at you or to you. It's always happening for you if you'll see it that way. And so the experience of your life is what you do with that. And where you either learn or you become a victim. And so I've just chosen to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where I like what you said about the story, right? Because that's why I said it's like, tell a story, not whatever. Because like at the end of the day, that is what it is. You learn your lesson. But
yeah, it's just a story.
If it's a repetitive story, then we stay stuck at that level. We don't have anywhere to go, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was the same thing. It's like when my daughter was born, it was a clear black and white. It was like, what kind of? It wasn't. I think guys, person, I think we care very little about ourselves. We need very little. It's but it's like what my step was, and people ask me like, oh, how do you move forward in life? And it's like become a leader, become more responsible, and through that, it makes you accountable for your stuff, right? It's like when you don't want to get out of bed or you don't want to do this or that, you want to let this slip. It's like, well, who's watching, right? And I think that's putting yourself in that role is going to help you progress way faster. It's like there's one thing about knowing information, applying it for yourself, but it's through the shared understanding is where you're getting the wisdom. So again, it's like if you want more out of life, take more responsibility. But yeah, the being a parent is crazy. I'm a co-parent as well too. I know a lot of guys struggle with that, right? And another thing you said, I like what you said about, I thought love was always doing things for people, right? Even though you weren't receiving, there wasn't the same love being received back.
Yeah.
And when we have these traumas and these things, it's kind of our understanding of love. It can become very depleting because we're just chasing. And ultimately, a man's purpose is to serve. It's to take action. I was doing a podcast with Michael Sartain last week, and what he said, he was like, "My way of showing love is doing things for you," right? But again, we can get caught up in that confusion of like, is what I'm doing actually progressing the situation, or is it just draining? Is it draining me? Is it, what am I receiving? So I think, really a healthy give and take or healthy relationship is, can I give more? Can I give more than I need to take? So finding the wife, the partner, even the business relationship. Can we all give more than we're taking? This is something I've spoken about in classes with one of my teachers, and this guy Cole I was talking about the other day, It was everything you're doing is imagine your relationship as what you're creating as like a child. It's like, and like you said, it's like, what am I going to leave to my child? Even like a business. It's like, if the business is your child, how would I handle this from that perspective?
Yeah.
Is it's less about me and more about that thing. So I have to get over my personal crap. I have to get over my ego, and I have to be willing to sacrifice whatever it is to ultimately to serve that higher purpose.
Yeah. Agreed.
What's your main sort of like demographic or age group for your guys coming in?
Good question. I would say just for roundtable, so the content game
Mm-hmm.
is completely different because content's pretty split down the middle for men and women. I would say that like for roundtable, the median of our guys is anywhere from like 28 to 45. And most again are married with kids. And most are business owners and all fall in line with the same belief system as well. So these are guys who, for the majority, most of them are blue collar in some way, shape, or form. So they're in service industry, home service. These are guys who would rather buy a bunch of land than a Lambo. And nothing wrong with either one.
Yeah.
We operate a little bit differently. Most of us like country living over fast city living. We like the sound of, crickets and whippoorwills over traffic and sirens. I think we're probably more accustomed to look up and see stars than to, be looking for stars on Hollywood Boulevard. So it's just a different kind of guy. I'd say very salt of the earth, very successful, incredibly successful guys, but also ones that don't flex it at all. Not in the way that you'd think. They'll flex their peace. They'll flex their impact, and they'll flex what God's doing. But for most of us, it's just not really about the stuff. It's more about the substance.
It's about the
I mean,
essence.
we have our like little flexes, you know what I mean? Like, but these are just amazing men who are dedicated to being the best leaders, the best visionaries, the best men of God, the best husbands, the best fathers that they can be.
So I like that, right? It's not about the thing; it's what's behind the thing. It's the essence of that
Yeah.
thing, right? Because
And I
that's
mean,
what.
hey, listen, don't get me wrong. I've got a fully restored 95 F250 Power Stroke that I love.
But that's not
So
the
we,
end all be all of your fulfillment. That's what we're trying to say.
no,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I love is working on it. So, I've got that. I've got an old 89 Bronco 2 that we've restored. I've got an 84 GMC C10 that we put an LS in. I've been a licensed mechanic for 22 years. You put me under the hood of an old truck, not nothing new, and definitely not a Tesla. But you put me under the hood of something old, and I'm right at home. Reminds me of growing up with I was raised with my grandparents. So reminds me of my grandfather. It's something I get to do with the boys. When I was starting my first company in 2016, 17, I didn't have the 6 figures in 6 days story like everybody has. I didn't have the, 7 figures in 7 weeks. What I did have was a mortgage and child support and all the things that come along with being a man. And so I was flipping Harleys out of my garage. So rebuilding old Evo engines, and it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't sexy, but I love dirty fingernails and getting under the hood of things. So yeah, man,
Another good point.
that's more the fulfillment than driving shiny stuff. But I do love shiny stuff, and I love muddy stuff.
I thought you said Chinese stuff, money stuff. Yeah, yeah, of course. It's like, but that's an expression of your joy, right? It's
Yeah.
because you have joy. That's what it looks like for you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's like to say to the guys all the time. It's like I get pretty similar group like with my guys coming in. It's like 25, 35, then I have other guys like 50 to 80. The younger guys are looking for more structure and stuff like that. The older guys are looking more for the deeper aspects of things, the essence, they seem to struggle with relationships. That's what we take them back to. And, but yeah, like another thing you said, it's like, it wasn't glamorous, right? But it's like what I needed to get done. I hear people like, well, I need to do something I love. I need to do something I love. And it's like, yeah, but like, you just need to do what you're supposed to do. It's not about the glam and what is it?
Yeah, the glitz and glamour. But I also think,
Yeah.
again, like there needs to be purpose behind what you do. And I think that,
Right.
if everything is spiritual, then we can find meaning in anything that we do. And where you are in this current moment doesn't dictate where you're going to go in your life. I think so many times we use the present circumstance of where we find ourselves in our jobs or in our relationships to say, like, this is my lot in life, this is my personality, this is who I am, this is what I do. Really, we should be setting loftier goals towards the vision that I believe God has placed in each and every one of us, in saying, okay, well, then who do I need to become to get there? Because your personality is malleable. Everything is malleable for the most part. Like, for you to say, I'm not this person. That's a belief that you're choosing to hold on to. Doesn't mean it's true. It's subjectively true to you because you need it to confirm a story, but it doesn't mean it's objectively true.
Yeah, getting over the stories. You said with the guys, are coming in, are they coming in already pretty successful, or what are some of the things they initially need to work on when they're joining the
Both
roundtable?
and yeah, I mean, we have guys who are further along, and success is a relative term.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you mean by success. If you mean by business success, we have guys who are doing very, very well when they come in and are looking more for growth in leadership and how to develop teams and structure their organization so they get more time with their family. We have guys who come in who are running really robust organizations and are really struggling with their physical health. We have guys who come in who are in the startup phase of their business and they're looking to learn how to run a business effectively while being men of integrity. And so we have guys who, for all intents and purposes, are doing really well in life and just feel really disconnected from God and feel really alone and isolated on their entrepreneurial journey and just looking for more guys who are into the same things, who want to link arms and build together.
So ultimately, it's those higher aspects, right? It's more deepening their connection with God, which is going to lead to their higher aspirations. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because
Well,
I
so
was asking.
go ahead.
I was asking because you said the guys come in with families and businesses and stuff like that. So it sounds like they have a strong foundation. Like you said, it's all success is relative, but they,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I'm
one
not
thing.
getting, yeah, we don't get guys who, are on their like third Vegas bender, coked out for 4 days, losing their family. And like, we just, not that there's, again, I got no issues or judgment against anyone. We don't get a lot of like, oh, it's the end of the rope for me. But
Yeah.
also, I don't think that my content really attracts that. I don't really speak to that. And so from a marketing perspective and from where I am at in life, I'm not going to speak to that because it's not where I'm at. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and because it's not where I've been, I'm not going to speak into a false narrative of something that I don't understand. So I understand loss, trauma, pain, tragedy, overcoming adversity. I understand addiction full well. I understand all of those things. I also understand what God can do with all of those things. And so that's what I choose to focus on. And yeah, I mean, the guys that come in, this will be good for you or anyone who's listening to this. Recognize, so anytime you see anyone marketing anything online, anytime you look at some of the guys that you mentioned earlier and how they flex, all of their supercars and the big mansions and all the stuff, when you go through life, you walk through 3 paradigm shifts. So as a kid, all you want is stuff. Like, you've got a daughter, I've got boys, all they want is stuff. Like, they just want, like, you get them something and then it's on to the next thing, and then it's on to the next thing. It's Pokemon, then it's, you know Bakugan, and then it's, I want this, and then I want that, and then what about this? And cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Totally. You've not had it before. You want to experience it. Absolutely. And dopamine is really easy to come by. When you get a little older, you get into your teens, 20s, you want the experiences. You want to graduate high school. You want to fall in love for the first time. You want to have sex. Maybe you want to have a kid. You want to go off to college. You want to get the job. You want to travel the world. Like, you want all the experiences that you've never had before. Then you get into what Richard Rohr would have you consider to be the second half of life, which is where I find myself and where I find a lot of the guys who are in our community and the guys that I walk with one-to-one. So on a one-to-one basis, I work alongside as a mentor and a coach to some household names, some celebrities, some music artists and founders that have done really well and are looking to answer questions that money doesn't solve, because they've solved that series of questions, which, to anyone listening, money doesn't solve all your problems, but it'll solve about 98% of them. So anybody that tells you it doesn't is broke.
Amazing.
Make money. But when you get older, you just recognize, like, it's relationships and it's the people. And that's what is the real richness of life. And you don't want the stuff or the experiences if you don't have people to share them with. Because what's the point of the biggest dinner table if you're sitting at it alone? What's the point of an amazing mansion if all the rooms are empty and nobody's coming to see you? What's the point of a supercar if you're just driving around the block with nobody to see? And so you'll recognize that in marketing, a lot of the guys who market the flex and market the cars and market all those things, what they're marketing to is people who've never had those things.
Yeah.
And so they're marketing to people who are still stuck in childhood, who don't even have the relationships yet, because they're still focused on getting the bag because they never had the bag, and they want to get the stuff because the stuff means that I'm impressive, because as a kid, everybody else had the stuff and I was never impressive. So I want to be impressive now. And then you get the people who move forward a little bit and they reach that second part where they're like, oh, and there's, again, nothing at all wrong with any of this. Just recognize where you're at in the cycle. You got the people who it's all about the experience, and like, we live in Bali or we live over here, and it's all about like the trips and like all of the travel and the laptop lifestyle, and you get to make the rules and it gets to be your reality in your world. All well and good until you start to have a family and some real responsibility, and then you want to set roots, because you want stability for your kids to grow up somewhere. You want to have a home that your kids can come back to, that their kids want to visit, and you recognize that, man, like, it's always been about people. And it's always been about who I surround myself with. And so one of the greater tragedies around some of these people that I know is not that they're chasing what they're chasing. I think that's all well and good, and I think everybody should. When I started making money, and I'd never made money before, I bought a bunch of stupid stuff to impress people that didn't care anyway. I did that. I ran that game.
Yeah, Rose.
I didn't feel any certain way about it. I probably was a little arrogant about it at first, because I come from a small town. I never had money before. And the experience for me, again, I was already a dad when all of this went down. And so it was just really fleeting for me. And being a pastor for so long, I've just always, like, people have always been my champ. But you'll recognize, like, the real travesty and the tragedy of the thing is, like, everybody who flexes all the stuff and all the materialism, like, you recognize they're just surrounded by other people who that's all they value. So all they have is their stuff to hold on to. They don't have deep, meaningful relationships. Most of them are not happily married. Most of them go through really tumultuous cycles of relationships because they're so focused on this subset and hierarchy of needs. They haven't progressed through it yet. And hopefully, like, the hope and prayer is that they do. But for me, like, I mark it to that latter half of, it is leadership, it's legacy, it is family, it is those deep relationships. It's building with people who have like life experience and like values, who want to build for kingdom impact, who want to raise healthy kids, who want to love one woman, who want to serve God as effectively and humbly as possible, who recognize that as quickly as something's given to you, it can be taken away, that God is the one who put you here, not your talent, not your charisma, because your talent and your charisma will open doors for you that God never called you to walk through. And if you don't have the seasoning and discernment to recognize that, you find yourself at the top of somebody else's mountain, unsatisfied, discontent, wondering why, because you followed all the rules and all the playbooks of everybody that came before you without ever recognizing that you never sought the deeper questions of who you actually are. And as a result, you've just been trying to live somebody else's fantasy of success.
Yeah, because if you don't know who you are, right, there's the term know thyself. And if you don't know who you are on higher and higher aspects as you grow and progress, you're only going to take yourself so far. And to the guys that are kind of flexing all this stuff and showing, like, I have this, I have that, it's like, well, who are they serving? Are they serving God or are they serving money? And that seems to be, there's always that thing we put in between. There should be nothing between us and God, right? But they'll put that thing between them and God. And if you put anything between you and God, it disconnects you from yourself, because who do we strive to be like, right, in our own divine way? And then they'll keep pushing, like we were saying before. It gets distorted. And then if you ask, my favorite question to ask guys, whatever area, is like, well, what's next, then what? And a lot of people can't answer that question because they're so spiritually disconnected. I think that's the number one issue, right? If you have that connection, you have a very finite existence here. If you have that connection, you have an infinite existence here and beyond here, right? There's always a higher state. There's always the deeper essence of what you're trying to achieve. There's always like you said before, it's like, I think you said, was it irresponsible? It's like the ones that just want to, if a grown man always wants to play with his toys, plays with his toys, plays with his toys, and you see he's lacking those relationships, it becomes very immature. It's cool when you're a kid, but eventually the man has to put the toys away and become the man.
100%, or he doesn't. And
Well,
so
that's
for
a
me, like,
choice.
yeah, I find that I'm responsible for myself and the way that I conduct and lead. And if that inspires others to do the same, amazing. If there's others that want to come along the journey, amazing. Am I here to tell a man how he's supposed to live and how he's supposed to have his being? I'm doing the best with what God's given me to lead that by example. And I've found that there's two ways of leading. And if we're all trying to get up a mountain, one is to climb up the mountain and to yell at people as to how they should catch up and how they should speed up and how, they're worthless if they don't. And the other way, which is the slower way, which is the Jesus way, is to just walk back down the mountain and walk with people. And so that's kind of the way that I've based and lived my life, and the way that I'll continue, which is never to berate somebody for where they're at, because we're all, I think a lot of us do the best with what we have and the level of awareness that we have for ourselves. Recognizing that you can be honest with yourself and still not be telling the truth, which is why accountability is so important. But also recognize that accountability that isn't asked for is always perceived as a threat. And so I'm not quick to tell guys where they need to get their stuff together unless I have a certain level of trust with them. Otherwise, it's going to be just another guy on the internet barking about how superior he is to everybody else and how I've cracked the code on what it is to be a man. I've cracked the code on what it is to be a man for me
Right.
and for my
Yeah.
home.
The biggest thing you can do is inspire those people to ask the questions. Nobody's ready to receive, like you said before. You're like, I don't work with a certain type of guy that's being irresponsible, maybe on a bender in Vegas and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
that guy's not even asking for help. He goes, if you,
Yeah, we're just in different places, you know?
yeah,
And even with what you're saying about, what's next, what's next, what's next, I think that's why it's important for men to, and women, just humans in general, to know the difference between SMART goals. So SMART are, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So those are typically the goals that we set, like our yearly targets in business and how many days we're going to go to the gym or a certain weight we want to lose. Like those are SMART goals. They're specific and they're measurable. On the backside of that, there's identity confirming goals, which is a lot of where I spend my time, which is if I am this, then I just do this. So for me, I don't ever have goals around fitness. It's just I'm an athlete. So if I'm an athlete, then I work out every day. And if I'm an athlete, I eat certain things. So if I'm an athlete, I don't drink certain things. If I'm a healthy, loving, present father, then I do these things every single day. And if I'm a dad who values experiences, well, then these are the trips that we're going to take this year. If I'm a loving, present husband, then these are the things that I do on a daily basis. These are the habits that I have every single week. Like every week we have Flower Friday where my wife gets fresh flowers. We have weekly date night. Like this is who I am. So this is what I do. And I don't need to feel a certain way about it. I don't need to get overly emotional about it. It's just I either am who I say I am or I'm not. And the goals that I set are based around that idea that if I am this person, which means that you got to define who it is that you want to become and what it is that you want and why that is important.
So you're sort of showing the difference between goals and aspirations, right? The aspirations are goals that never have an end point to them, right? It's just
Yeah.
who you want to become. It keeps driving you
Which is why they're
forward.
identity confirming, right? Because there never is an end point. There are checkpoints,
Yeah.
right? There, and we can quantify by, in the book that I read, it says you'll know a tree by the fruit that it bears.
Yeah.
And so we can always measure the fruit against the effectiveness of the action that we're taking. So we look at those end results, recognizing that, yeah, it's always evolving. You're never just a great dad and then you stop. You're never in shape and then you just get to quit.
Well,
You're never,
that's why I say what's next, right? Because
yeah,
there shouldn't be, if anything's divine, what is God? God's always expanding and growing, right? And it's like man is created in the image of God, so it's like we have that same potential to always create, expand, and grow, just like that. So
that's it.
there is no end point. I see people that they check the boxes, then they kind of they're it's a difference between external and internal validation. They get the thing, and then it's short term happiness. Like then what? Like I don't know, buy another car, but it's more of the same gets you more of the same. That's why somebody is like if me or Cody or anybody you see, you're like, hey, what is it about that guy that he has? Right? It's the fruits, like you said. Is the guy probably has fruits that's inspiring you to say, hey, there has to be more. And you ask, connect with that guy, connect with the community, a roundtable, whoever you want to connect with. And that's how, that's the next step. That's the next step in your progression. Right.
Yeah. And it's a humble recognition that, so many of the decisions that we make are based off the things that we don't want. And so many of the actions that we take are in like a response to anxiety and fear and frustration of
Yeah,
failure, of not executing effectively.
it's all fear driven.
And like what built the problem in your life is not going to be what fixes it. Like the same energy and mindset that created the problem, which is what Einstein said, is not going to be what solves it. And so, one of the questions that anyone listening can ask yourself is, okay, well, if I already had everything, like everything that I'm working for, everything that I'm worrying about, everything I'm striving for, everything that's creating anxiety in my life, bills need to be paid, or kids are growing up, or my marriage is rough, or I'm not in the health that I want to be, or I feel really disconnected from God. And the problem with a lot of that is because we create that anxiety around it, then we just find coping mechanisms around it, which means we avoid it. And that procrastination leads to isolation, which leads to self-medication. And
I like how you word everything. What did you say? What did you say? Did you say procrastination, isolation, self medication? Or is it?
Is that what I said? I work in alliteration sometimes and rhyming. That's just a
Yeah.
pastoral thing. And so that just happens. The the exercise is, okay, well, if you already had everything that you wanted and everything that you're working for, you already created it. Well, who would you be then? And how would you ask? And how would you act? And how would you behave? And how would you interact with your kids and your wife or your husband if you're a woman listening? Who would you be? Well, why not just be that now? Neville Goddard has us consider in The Power of Awareness that all of life is active imagination, that everything is an illusion. Now, not to say that like we're in like the matrix, we're not getting down that rabbit hole, but what it is that all of reality for the most part is subjective. It's subjective to your experience, and all of your beliefs are really just reticulating actions that you take on a daily basis. And so if you could act as if the wish was already fulfilled, if you could act as if the thing has already happened, if you could act as if you were already that person, well, then what would change in your life? And so then what's keeping you from doing that now?
Well, that's the thing. That's it's worthiness and the strength to actually do that, right? And that's why in hermeneutics we always say the internal world is more reality than the external world, right? Because how you think, feel, and see yourself is what you're going to experience in the external world, right? So it's like the external world we get to play with, but that's not the end all be all, right? You said you restore classic cars, you really enjoy that, but that's because it's a reflection of your internal world, right? So what is more true is the things that it's a hard shift in perspective, but is it the things we can touch and feel, or is it the states of being that we can cultivate? What's the priority? I think that's kind of going back like what Neville Goddard's saying. He's a big like manifestation teacher. That's what the priority is. It's like if you don't have you're not taking care of your spiritual well-being, well then how do you expect that to take care of your mind? How do you expect that to take care of your physical well-being and so forth? I've talked about this before, but it's very easy to get stuck in the physical world and say this is it, right? And when you grow and progress, you really flip that upside down. Right. Most of the world isn't telling you to focus on your spiritual development first, telling you to get a job, do this, do that. And like you said, it keeps you in those just checking boxes, keeps you in that fear state, and that's where all the issues perpetuate. So it's really realigning yourself to say, hey, my focus needs to be on spirit first. That's going to get me over the anxiety and the stories and all the junk in my mind, and that's going to free up the space so I can actually go take action. Right, that's a big part. Take action in the world and create what you need to create. Yeah.
Well, as I say, faith without works is dead.
What's that?
Faith without works is dead.
Without taking action?
Yeah. Faith without works. Works is just action. It's just a biblical term for action.
What's it been like since you're still a minister, right? But in your own way. Was it in the church before? What's sort of the difference? Because I've seen over the last 3-5 years, there's been a big shift in how people are out in the world. It's more church to me seems, I was raised Catholic and Catholic school, church all the time, altar server, all that stuff. But it's shifted from sort of that traditional sense how it was, say, 20 plus years ago to now community based. As people are more engaged, it's less about what I'm observing. It's less about physically being in the church all the time, and people are going out and sharing that more, right? And then there's no really right or wrong, but yeah, it seems like church is less of what it used to be, and it's more of a container to build community, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean the role of the church has always been one, to create disciples, to teach the word of God, and to build robust community. And so the church traditionally, not the modern evangelical church, the church traditionally was never a place for evangelical like conversion. That always, like, you were the church, the church was the people. And so you would have small collections of people who would get together because they were heavily persecuted and not everybody was literate. And so you'd have people who could read the sacred text and who could help you to study it effectively so that you could then go out and teach it to others and be the church. The church was never an event. The church was never like this place in the open where everybody just gathers and has an experience, because they were persecuted. So now what we have, and this comes through like the 1900s of again the evangelical revolution. A lot of that started here in Tulsa, with guys like Oral Roberts and Billy Graham and Bishop Carlton Pearson, and so you had this beautiful revival ideology. Rhema was a big part of that, which is a large, word of faith church here. And so what you had was this idea of tent revival, and this idea of people coming together and getting healed and seeing the wonders of God, and really kind of creating a spectacle of the thing. And I think there's beauty in all of it, and I think that there's perversion in it as well. I think it just depends on the day.
Yes, people.
Yeah, it just depends on the people. It depends on the motivation. It depends on a lot of things. What the church has become now, in terms of like front facing, what a lot of people see is like charismatic megachurch. And that's more entertainment and experience. And that's more of a business entity that has this, big back doors. It does a front door. It's consistently getting people in, getting people on. I mean, you got to think of it like they have their marketing, which is their marketing is their music. It's the persuasiveness and charismatic nature of the pastor. It's what's being preached so that it tickles the ear, so it's easy to digest, right? So that's your marketing. You've got pamphlets that go out. You've got programs. You've got Christmas specials and Easter specials and Mother's Day specials and banging children's programs that are really just, high-level babysitting clubs. And so that's all the marketing. Then you have the sales, which is the message, and then the altar call. Right? So you're selling them a non-tangible, which is salvation. Then you get them into the community, which is like school. So you get them into an MRR, which is your tithe. So you're putting them on a monthly recurring so that your revenue increases as a church, and you want to keep them on that MRR for as long as possible. So you give them what they need: discipleship, community, places to be involved, ways to serve, right? And then you have your affiliate program, which is them going and telling their friends and pulling them into, again, the other marketing opportunities, which can be the Sunday service, or it can be a multitude of other experiences that happen inside of the community. So it's a business.
Yeah, well, there's also nothing wrong with the business, right? Because the business is
No,
the business.
but when you can see it for what it is, you can start to appreciate it. You can start to understand how, like for me, being in the like charismatic world for 13 years as a pastor, people ask me how I got so good at sales and marketing and branding and infrastructure and teams. I'm like, that's all we do. It's just a nonprofit.
Yeah. What's that one? There's a book written by, there's a whole sales book. I think Russell Brunson recommended it before. I forget what it's called. It's basically a whole sales book for the church.
Oh, nice. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'll just send you with it. I have to look it up afterwards. But yeah, but ultimately it's like, is your faith moving you forward, or are you bringing that church? Like, you're the church, right? Like you said that. So you have to bring it into your community regardless of the entertainment aspect of that too. It's like, how do you show up? I see a lot of people that they participate in church, but like, what are you taking with you, right? And it's ultimately like, who are you becoming? Take it with you. It's not something you turn off or on. It's a constant thing.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound, there's nothing cynical about, I love the church. We're active in church.
Yeah.
I love the community. I love what the church is trying to do. I think that there are some ways that we miss it, and I think there are some ways that we get it right. And so long as you're asking those questions and you're pursuing the deeper things and not losing, not getting lost in the sauce of the celebrity of it all, and the influence of it all, I think there's a lot of fruit that can be born out of it.
Yeah, as long as I say, as long as it builds personal empowerment, as long as you are not, like you said, getting lost in the sauce, because it's easy to get caught up. It's easy to almost, there shouldn't be a suffering together. I think that's a terrible thing for people to do. I see a lot of these groups. It's not how can we lift each other up and build each other and move forward. It's kind of like, oh, we're all here and we're just going to suffer together.
Well, but I mean, yes, I think unnecessary suffering is like self-victimization and martyrdom for the sake of being able to talk about it. I also, like devil's advocate, would say that we are all going to experience suffering at some point in our lives, and better to do that with people who can stand shoulder to shoulder with you than try to do that alone without.
Yeah, that's the one thing I tell everybody, right? Is after my classes and stuff, it's like my biggest piece of advice for anybody is don't do it alone, right? Somebody's gone through it. We've been around for thousands and thousands of years. So it's like the number one thing. What was it? You isolate. What was your 3 thing?
I don't know, what was it?
They just come off the tongue.
Isolate, procrastinate, self-medicate, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's probably really profound. It just happens.
That's cool, yeah. But yeah, that's how we crash, right? It's like when we disengage from life is when we crash. I like to say, do you ever walk into a gym and like when the energy is dead and you're like, what, there's something different about it. And I think the key thing is people aren't connecting. right? So there's no energy there if we don't connect. And if there's no energy, we can't put it towards what we need to do. Yeah, reaching out. That's why I like all the programs and the communities and everything that's popping up now at a really accelerated pace. It's like that's what we're trying to do is get into communities so we can move forward together, not suffer alone. Right. As soon as somebody it's easy to fall off as soon as somebody said, hey, this is this is only happening to me. No one's ever figured it out. They just go in a downward spiral and regress. And then that's when the devices and self medication, all that stuff comes in because it's either to kind of hijack that feeling or just numb ourselves.
Yep.
Everybody I've done these podcasts with and people I work with, the suffering always comes from primarily disconnection to self, and then it's what are we using to? We're going to put something in that void. What are we using to connect ourselves to have that temporary high or fix or whatever it is? I was talking to somebody the other day. They do a lot of like health stuff here in Florida, and he said he was put on Adderall, and the intention behind it was good. It was like, hey, get your schoolwork done and stuff like that. But he's like, the more I took that stuff, it just more disconnected me to myself. And disconnect from yourself, it's like disconnected from God. So you know what? So once a guy, what are the fruits? I guess once the guys sort of max out their, you can't ever max out relationships, but once they have their foundation in place and they step into leadership, what are the type of things those guys are creating? Are they doing more groups
Yeah.
themselves? Are they, because once you have
Growing.
those foundation, what's that?
Well,
I was
one, I
saying,
mean, you never stop. For a lot of our guys who it's just consistent growth. So it's growing their entities, moving more into like lateral acquisition. So meaning if there are, secondary and complementary businesses locally, because a lot of our guys are in local infrastructure, that become available, pulling those into play, growing actual, holding companies that have a sizable equity that can then eventually be sold or acquired. It's helping them. Some of our guys are diversifying into building more of a personal brand. So doing a little bit more communicating and speaking, recognizing that God's given them a voice through the success that's been cultivated. So they want to help more guys do that in their kind of, neck of the woods, whether that be in custom home building or roofing or guttering or concrete or in, media companies. It is
so
giving them the frameworks and the tools to be able to, once they've grown to the point of being able to stabilize and continue growth and scale of local infrastructure, which has a TAM, right? So you can't necessarily scale local infrastructure because total addressable market dictates how large you can get outside of like lateral acquisition. So bolting on,
horizontal.
secondary businesses into the various legs of your LLC. Outside of that, it then becomes a cool, like, what do we want to do with this? Where do we want to grow? How do you want to grow?
Yeah, it's cool. But I think it's infusing. So a lot of you guys are home services, correct? You said we're blue collar home service. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I've been getting to that, trying to acquire some home service business because I think those are awesome. They're always going to be around.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, especially now, it's always going to be consistent. But yeah, I think what you said is like it's infusing, but it's like it's a few things. It's like leaders creating leaders, but it's also infusing that divine essence into everything they're doing, how they're showing up in their business, how they're showing up with their employees. And I think ultimately the best thing you can do for somebody is to give them more potential. Right. I see a lot of guys that get stuck in business that come to me. I say, well, how much are you pouring into your people? How much leadway, how much room for growth are you actually going to give them? Because, if God's always expanding, if we're also always supposed to be expanding, you can't put limitations on your employees. There was I think the guy, it's like How to Be Rich or the Science of Being Rich. I think the guy who started Maxim magazine, I think, I think in that book, he he says, I want to give my employees and my team everything they possibly can to grow and progress. And he's like, hopefully one day they leave me. Because if they leave me, he's like, the good thing is I know they're a good employee if they ever need to come back. Or, my competition is my friends. So it just makes everything more enjoyable. Now, is it, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, so we got a ton of blue collars there, Steel City and stuff. I was raised I started tearing down houses when I was like 10 years old.
Oh,
And,
nice.
is it a big, do you guys understand kind of the scale and the horizontal scale as well too, or is it new, or it's
Yeah, we've
you
been
get it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's not. I don't mean to minimize or anything. It's just. It's not a terribly difficult concept to understand once you get in the middle of it. And once you get your legs under you for a year or two inside a business, and you start to understand local market and infrastructure, it becomes pretty easy to delineate. And so, and even for us, like I've been in my family, we've been in agriculture my whole life. My dad owns a feed store here in Tulsa. It's been in business since 1929, and so it's we understand, our market. My dad understands his market. When you're in it, kind of becomes like
It's
reading a book.
easy. Yeah, it's just second nature. It's just easy. Cool. Well, before we sign off, anything you want to leave for the viewers? How they can reach out to you, roundtable?
Oh
Whatever.
yeah, I mean, if you want to connect, I mean, you can connect with me on social. I answer every message that comes my way. It's not managed by a VA or a team or anything. Um, I want to make sure that anybody that wants to reach out and feels that what I'm doing is valuable, I want to be able to give back and answer any questions. If you're interested in working together or seeing anything that I'm up to or speaking or anything else, you can just go to codyjefferson.com. It's just that easy.
Easy. Fair enough. Yeah, I like it. No, there's no many chat automations trying to sell your PDF or anything.
No, none of those. None of those. We've been able to do everything without a serious, like, nothing wrong with any of that. I think it's all great.
I think it's more genuine though.
I'd probably be more of a household name if I did. It's just not been the direction I've gone up to this point, and we've never run ads to anything, so everything's been organic, and just let God do His thing.
Yeah. Living by the fruits. Perfect. Appreciate it. Hi, man.
That's it.
Signing off. Appreciate you coming
All right,
on.
brother. Yeah.